Hi, Sam Dubé here, and we're honored to be in the home of Professor Robert Barsky, who is a Canada Research Chair in Law at Carleton University, and we're here today to interview him concerning his debut novel, Hatched. And I'm going to read the synopsis at the back, just to give us an idea. A well-respected chef in New York City has decided to fulfill a lifelong dream to open a restaurant that is devoted entirely to eggy creations in a small Wall Street area of the city. A smart Wall Street area of the city. Working with an inspired architect, John erects his restaurant in the shape of a Fabergé egg, modeled after those remarkable masterpieces that were offered each year by the Tsar to his lovely wife in the years leading up to the Russian Revolution. Fabergé Restaurant becomes the destination for the wealthiest of New York City clients, but it's also the place where a plan is hatched by 3 former college roommates to counterfeit billions of dollars and shake the United States economy to its very yoke. A rollicking novel filled with intrigue, passion, and voluptuous egg recipes, Hatched is a sumptuous treat. Thank you so much for having us in your home today, Robert. It's a pleasure. So could you please give us the premise of your novel?
Sure. So it all begins, the story really began during my honeymoon with Marcia. We had this magnificent, powerful, wild dream. And I woke up and I thought, oh, I have to tell Marcia what this was. And I couldn't remember. You know the way it is.
Oh, yes.
So I said, Marcia, I want to, and then all of a sudden it all came back. And it was really the premise that I had dreamed. So I dreamed that college roommates who had been disgruntled by inequality in the American system and who had allegiances to the ideas of social justice had all dreamed of one day challenging the ways in which inequality is reinforced in American society. And they all wanted to bring down the system. And the dream that they had was to print so much money that they would create a blip in the economy. That suddenly the American government would say, wow, the economy is doing really well, things are really humming along. But in fact, things were not going so well. The only reason why there was this little blip was because there were billions and billions of dollars being pumped into the economy. And part of their ambition was to pump it into the economy by putting it into the poorest areas of cities. So they would leave garbage bags filled with millions of dollars in various places, and so that the money would actually get distributed amongst the people. So that was the dream. But the dream also had eggs in it. And so for years I worked on this novel and decided that the entire novel should take place inside of an egg. And specifically inside of a Fabergé egg. So these are examples of Fabergé eggs. I wish that they were real, since they're worth about $20 or $30 million each. But these are, this was actually the first, this is a replica of the first Fabergé egg. And inside you, typical of the Russian tradition, in Easter you have another egg, and inside of that egg you have a little hen.
Oh, wow.
So you've got this idea of there being layers upon layers upon layers
right,
that ultimately lead into some kind of profound truth. And that, in a sense, is an egg. An egg is what we consume, what all of us eat in so many different ways. But the egg is also the very basis of life. And that's a kind of image and a symbol that's been really important to me as I wrote this novel.
We spoke a little bit earlier before the formal interview a little bit about the imagery of the egg, and also I mentioned something about, you just mentioned here about the levels within the egg, and so we could talk about the stratification of society, and ranging from the representation of the egg through a spectrum of very mundane, the egg you can buy at the grocery store or at the farmer's market or at the farm, and everyone basically having access to these eggs and knowing how to cook them, all the way up to the elite level.
Right.
The rare, the beautiful and precise and bejeweled Fabergé egg.
Right.
And I asked you, was that intentional?
Oh yeah, it's a very heart of the novel, and I think if you're interested in social justice, the massive inequalities between the haves and the have-nots, which were so exaggerated in the period of Tsar Nicholas I, should be at the heart of your efforts. And in this case, that is the premise of the novel. The novel takes place inside of a fabulously expensive restaurant. in the Wall Street area.
Shaped like
a Fabergé egg. So you imagine a restaurant that looks like this. And there's a door, and in go the very wealthiest people of society. But of course, in the back door goes workers who struggle to make the best recipes, the best egg dishes imaginable. And they make, maybe a decent living, but generally speaking, they make a living. And having worked in restaurants and seen extremely wealthy people come in while we were slaving in the back and struggling and so forth and so on, it becomes a kind of upstairs, downstairs story. And you do feel that there is that inequality, particularly in extremely elite institutions, is so marked. And so that, because all of my work is wrapped up in challenging racism and xenophobia and social injustice.
Yes.
That became a very central part of the novel. And there's a character in there who dreams of being a writer. So he lands up winning a competition. He enters many, many writing competitions. He wins one competition for the American Egg Association. And with that money, he's able to take a little bit of time off of his normal business, which is moving. And he knows about this amazing, expensive, phenomenal restaurant in New York and thinks, where better could I go to write a novel about eggs than inside of an egg restaurant? The problem with this egg restaurant is that there's nothing under a couple $100 on the menu. So every time he goes in there, he has to check his balance and say, can I actually be in here? And he keeps overdrawing his account and so forth. So he is, in a sense, the person who's betwixt and between. He's between the wealthy client and the worker, and writing and trying to be inspired. But he's also playing with eggs at the table, so all the people are kind of making fun of him. Here's this kid, playing with these eggs. What does this mean? And he is, as I said, he's hoping to write the great American novel.
So again, we talked about this earlier, a novel within a novel.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And there's a stratification there as well, isn't there?
There is a stratification because, what is a novelist is somebody who is working with primary materials, language, and hoping that someday the work enters into the world.
Right.
In other words, you hope that the novel hatches.
There's also the image of the egg representing life or pre-life.
Yep.
And you talked about this conspiracy to inject billions of counterfeit dollars into the U.S. economy and raising hell and having to respond to particular demands.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about the genesis of that revolution within the restaurant?
Sure. So it is a revolutionary novel. The people who work in the back are led by this guy named Nate, who is committed to changing the dynamics of contemporary society. So he reads anarchist works, and that's a connection to my own work because
with
the biography of
Chomsky. Yes.
Yeah, he reads the history of anarchism and he tries to preach this to the various people who work in the kitchen, including his girlfriend, his one-time girlfriend, who actually lands up being the main character in the novel.
Oh, okay.
And he dreams of the day when the people, the elite, who are sitting on the other side of the wall, will be brought down by the efforts of the revolution. Little does he know that there are three roommates who are themselves billionaires. They've all made a lot of money, who come together inside of this restaurant to discuss a plan to bring down American capitalism and bring in social justice. And it all starts because one of the roommates went to Italy once, and this is based on a true story that happened to me. So in the story, I talk about this one roommate, Ted, who goes to Italy and meets a man who actually prints money. And this happened to me. It was the strangest thing. I'm writing a novel about forging enough money to bring down American capitalism, but what do I know about forging money? I read books about it, and I met scientists who were able to explain to me some of the dynamics of the paper and the printing and so forth and so on. But it's very hard for somebody who's a novelist to understand what it takes to actually print real money. And this comes out of a story that I had invited a scholar of French modernist literature to Vanderbilt University, where I was a professor. She's absolutely lovely, fascinating person. And she thought, wow, I've been here to Vanderbilt. I'd like to bring you to Milano to give talks. So I went there, and she said one day to me, I'm taking you somewhere, I'm not going to tell you where it is. It's a special place, and don't ask me any more questions about it. So in the night, we drive off into the distance, and we're about an hour and a half from Milano. We go to an industrial area, and this door goes up, one of the factories, and there stands a man.
And you thought you were in for it right there.
I thought this is going to get murdered outside of Milano. And the man turned out to, he didn't speak any English. I know some Italian. We begin to talk. And it's her father. He has this factory. And he has invited me to the factory because he knows I love motorcycles. We go downstairs, and he has 100 motorcycles, one from each year from 1900 to 2000, all Italian.
Wow.
And he starts them all up. So it was very exciting, dramatic, and a very strange, a very, very strange thing to happen late at night in an hour and a half from Milano. And then he says to me, do you want to see what I make upstairs? So I said, I'd love to see this factory. I go upstairs, and there are printing presses everywhere. And he says, I print money.
Wow.
That's my job. I am one of the 3 factories that creates the euro. And his particular contribution was that he prints the numbers and the lines onto the paper. So here I am standing in a money factory, dreaming of
other things. Maybe that's a testament to your nobility of character.
The coincidence was too extraordinary. And it's, that's the premise by which I come up with this idea that one of the roommates knows something about money and then thinks, why don't we just print so much money that the entire economy will be awash in cash.
Wow.
And everything will look great. And the president can stand up and say, it's a little bit like today, by the way. It's not counterfeit money, but it really is very filthy money, considering the way in the United States, the unfair taxation that has led the Amazons in the world to pay nothing and the poor to pay more. We could draw parallels, I think, with that society. But the president says, look how great things are going, and then he gets a little phone call saying, you think things are going great, but in fact we've been dumping billions of fake dollars into your economy. And we're happy to reveal that to the American populace before the election, which will bring down your government. Or you meet with us, and you meet our demands, which are to change the way that American government spending is done to favor the poor rather than the rich.
Wow.
So, and this is all being talked about inside of this egg, which, as it turns out, I'll reveal is many things, there's many more to say, but the egg itself is the shape of the restaurant, and it's in the shape of one of these beautiful eggs. And it's decorated on the inside with eggs. All the food that's served in this restaurant is connected to eggs. Everything from caviar to waffles made of egg whites to egg dishes.
Wow.
Little do we know, until later, that the egg itself is also alive.
Oh.
This is an actual egg.
Oh, wow.
Somewhere in the middle of the novel hatches.
Okay. Ooh, okay.
So it's got a kind of dreamscape perspective as well.
Okay, I was unaware of that. All right, well that's intriguing. What a twist that is. But also you mentioned some sumptuous recipes being introduced throughout the novel as well. So I think there's an added attraction there.
Totally, and I cooked in very fancy restaurants. It was the way I paid my way through college, and so I began to accumulate some very complex egg recipes, and they're in there. There are a few. There are some very interesting ways that the Chinese cook with eggs, and not just the eggs that we're accustomed to.
Right.
There are many more birds that produce eggs that we don't eat. And there's a fascinating history of eggs. In North America, turkey eggs used to be more popular than hen eggs. So there's also just the ways in which tastes shift and so forth. But eggs, as you suggested, it's a building block of life, and it's a building block for endless recipes that we consume.
And clearly a building block for revolution.
Totally. Well, just imagine, pre-revolutionary Russia was a society built on inequality, massive inequality. And every year the Tsar would commission from Fabergé, one of these eggs, which are today worth millions, they're intricate, they're beautiful. This one here, for example, contained a train that was made of gold that actually functioned. So you've got this miniature, magnificent little train that you'd wind up and would travel around. And in fact, each of the eggs that Fabergé made has something inside of it. And many of the things that are inside of it would actually function. Yeah. So, so the population of Russia, which is at the time living with the destitution that the serfs were living in, knows about these fabulously wealthy aristocrats, the wealthiest aristocrats in the history of the world, that are doing things like commissioning these eggs. So it's the story of Fabergé, but Fabergé itself is the story of not only the Russian Revolution, but the story of the most fabulous inequality that I think the world has ever produced.
So I want to touch on that a little bit more. You mentioned having worked in many high-end restaurants and accumulated these recipes and thus skill. And then we can juxtapose that with the wealthy who are coming in and consuming this food and maybe not even being aware of the effort it took to create these, and nor the inequality of the workers being unable to even afford the fruits of their own labor.
Exactly.
Right? So I was just thinking, can you comment a little bit about that, that spectrum from very, very skilled and poor to what we could call unskilled and opulent or rich and benefiting from that. And for instance, the majority of the clientele coming into the restaurants you worked in maybe had, at the risk of sounding diplomatic, different set of skills than those who were creating the food, those who were running
That's incredibly perceptive. And in fact, it's one of the things that Nate says at some point, that if there was some kind of a calamity in society, whatever it is, electricity's destroyed or there's a massive storm, whatever else, who will rise up? The people who can do things, the people who can build things, the people who can fix things, the people who know how things work, not the owners who sit in very cushy circumstances without any training beyond, say, the manipulation of money. So you're right, these are people who are, I mean, even like the craftsmen who build something as beautiful and perfect as this, these craftsmen were paid minimally to create this, and of course they're extraordinary with their hands, incredibly dexterous, but they couldn't possibly own anything like this. So you're exactly right. You're building something you couldn't possibly afford, and you are the one with the skill, not
so you're not benefiting from it.
You're absolutely right. So that is at the very heart of the novel. And when it comes to something like food, we often hear these stories of extremely wealthy people who say they go bankrupt or something and they find out they don't even know how to boil water. You know, these crazy stories that you hear. Yeah, they don't even know how to survive, and yet they benefit from the greatest that the civilization has to offer. Just to change our track for a moment, get a little bit personal here with regards to the creation of the novel. You have an extensive background as a legal expert. Refugee law, you've written biographies of Chomsky and Zelig Harris. What was the greatest challenge for you in creating this debut novel, and why? Yeah, novels are having written other kinds of books, I can say that novels are unimaginably difficult, partly because you have to create characters who are convincing, whose utterances make sense relative to who they are. I had a lot of trouble with time. You know, what time is it when she enters into the restaurant? Where are they at in the preparation of the food? Okay, now the clients are coming in. Is the food ready? Has this been served? So as you write the novel, and I love being distracted and getting carried away into certain types of discussions, you think, how has that discussion affected the lobster that's cooking over there? You know? So that required an incredible amount of attention to make sure that, and what day is it today? And what about tomorrow? And where was she? And did she come back? And okay, she left with that guy from the restaurant. Is she back yet? When is Jude going to leave? All these kinds of questions. Just when I think about the great novels that I love to read, which are the great 19th century novels, 700-800 page novels by Dickens and Trollope and Tolstoy and Dostoevsky, to handle the number of characters that they handle, and to have the story make sense, and to make sure that the reader always knows roughly where she is or he is as she reads it, wow, that's difficult. And you also, I think that every profession has an occupational hazard. And the occupational hazard of teaching is that you're used to teaching. So you don't want to have characters in a novel teaching.
Right.
And it's a temptation. You know, you got a guy inside of the kitchen who loves the history of anarchism. He's got a girlfriend who works there. You don't want to have him teaching, but you do wish to convey the information that he is finding so exciting as he thinks about bringing down American capitalism. So yeah, these are really, really hard. So it took me 7 years to do this thing.
Wow. Well, you're clearly passionate about the ideas and the messages. What ideally would you like to get a reader to get out of your novel, ideally?
I guess I feel about art that we who enjoy it need to enjoy it in our own way. So I guess I would love for there to be a powerful experience, be it what it may, but not a particular message. Okay. You know, and there's enough ambivalence and confusion and so forth amongst the characters themselves, because at the heart of the novel there's a violent act that's committed, and there's also a religious component where this idea is betrayed, and you also land up siding with criminals. It's hard not to. This is like a bit like watching Breaking Bad. You know, you want Walt to get away with it. And you want these three guys to get away with it. You want them to print all this money, distribute it to the poor, destroy American capitalism. You want it. I mean, it's hard not to. And yet, what consequences would this have, you know, for other people? So
outside the egg, so to speak.
Outside the egg. Exactly.
Wow. Okay. Is there anything else you'd like to touch upon concerning your novel, its creation, that perhaps you haven't had a chance to discuss in the past? Something that's been egging you on? Sorry, I couldn't resist.
That's an exciting question.
I knew we were in danger.
I wasn't expecting it.
Oh, geez, you got me there.
Yeah, I guess it's really something that you've pointed out, and I think you've driven it home more powerfully than even I had thought of, which is the image of the egg is so absolutely fundamental. And you know, you think of everything from people's difficulty in conceiving a child, which has them thinking about their own eggs, to the ways in which, say, North American society has moved towards a particular egg, not because it's the best tasting, but because it's the easiest to ship. And that the sizes of eggs, which are in fact very irregular, have become regular, so the kind of homogenization
that's very
that eggs relate to. That eggs are, as you say, incredibly inexpensive, thank goodness, and many people survive on them. Mm-hmm. But you also mentioned, you know, you said, you know, $2.39 for a dozen eggs, $2.99, and now they got the blue ones and the green ones, and you know, you've got this way in which stratification keeps occurring and takes from us that kind of fundamental building block of life, the egg. So I love that, and I'm crediting you with that. It's a terrific idea. And then of course you come up to the inedible egg, the egg that is so beautiful and so profoundly useless.
And yet simultaneously extremely skilled, yet unskilled.
Absolutely. And you can't do a thing with this.
No, you can't.
You can look at it and you can dream about it. And you know, some of the details, if this was the real one, it's hard to imagine what went into this egg, but inside of it is a golden train that actually works.
Wow.
This is a map that's been carved onto the outside of the egg.
Look at that, yes.
Because this egg commemorates the Trans-Siberian Railway. So the map of Russia and all of the stations that the train services are on this egg.
Wow.
So the egg is, and then, you know, this is the image of imperial power, and so each of the eggs, and this is the Tsar's own carriage, each of the eggs that Fabergé created is wrought with symbols and symbolism, all with the most expensive kinds of jewels,
Right.
semi-precious materials that you can possibly dream.
And they're all unique too, is that correct?
Everyone's different.
They're all different.
And
Wow.
as far as we know, there are maybe around 30 in the world of this type. Fabergé made many, many different types of jewels, but it's these eggs that are the most famous.
Wow. Now, how can we get a copy of your book? I believe, ironically, Amazon, is that right?
Amazon's the place. Yeah, it's available on all the big platforms.
Okay. And who was your publisher? Just to put that.
So the publisher is a fun group. It's Sunbury Press.
Okay.
They're based in Pennsylvania, in the U.S., and they have a series of other off-prints that they work on. I told them that I wanted to make an egg kind of cover, and as you can tell, this really suits the purpose. Mm-hmm. But this in itself captures art in the way that I find so fascinating. There you go. Well, this is a soapy bubble that was blown in a park in Washington, D.C. in the winter.
Oh, wow.
So when it was blown, it froze. So this is a frozen. Soapy bubble through which you can see the landscape.
Yeah.
And then it was tinted gold and put into the shape of an egg. But this in itself is an artwork done by a photographer in Washington. So it's again symbols within symbols.
Yeah, exactly. Especially the frozen in the shape of an egg, and itself having a mildly spherical shape, and then freezing in time.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's almost like we're looking in. Yeah. On this moment and what's going on inside the egg, the complexity and the multiple media going from liquid to solid. I don't know.
You can go on and on.
Yeah, but that's
this
wonderful.
This is the surface of the egg book, and then inside of the egg is the story. So every egg has a story.
That's right. We probably throw a few more egg puns in there too.
It would be good for our existence, I think.
On that note,
we could exaggerate, but
we could.
Yeah.
Jeez, wow. I mean, you're prolific. But do you have any plans for any further novels in the future? Is anything brewing in your egg-shaped head right now?
Talking with you makes my egg-shaped head and my egg-shaped brain. Yeah, I think I want to write a novel based on the Faust story. So the person who aspires to do more than the heavens will allow.
Right.
So that'll be the next one.
All right. Well, I can't wait. Actually, that sounds really intriguing, and I'm wondering if there will be food metaphors and euphemisms.
Undoubtedly.
Wonderful. Robert, it's been a distinct honor and a pleasure being here, invited into your home. Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you for doing this. It's a real pleasure.
It was an honor.
Thanks.
It was an honor. Sam Dubé here with Professor Robert Barsky. We'll see you again soon.
Excellent interview.
Excellent.